Story 1. What happens now? Donald Trump sends his personal criminal defense attorney to Ghislaine Maxwell and offers her a pardon if she lies for him. Story 2. Tulsi Gabbard returns to the White House press room to emphasize that the Russians had no involvement in election interference and that former President Obama was responsible. She claims he is a small-brained traitor and not a natural-born citizen. She also mentions the Epstein files, which was unexpected. Caroline will have to redirect her. Story 3. Normally, the president would resign rather than be distracted by the scandal or bring shame on the country. However, Donald Trump ran for office this time just to stay out of jail, so he will not resign. Republicans in Congress will not impeach him because they are either afraid of his base or believe it is worth letting him get away with serious allegations if they receive tax breaks and support migrant detention centers in return. Story 4. I assume at some point he will start a nuclear war to distract from it. He is definitely the kind of person who would kill millions to protect himself. Story 5. I imagine his first official act upon being sworn in the second time was to write himself a presidential pardon, a get-out-of-jail-free card for any and all actions he has ever done, which the Supreme Court will likely decide was within his official power at the time. The number of posts I have seen online lately by Make America Great Again Republicans trying to morally justify pedophilia is unbelievable. I genuinely just saw a comment from someone arguing that, so what if he abuses children? Everything else he does is awesome, so it is worth it. These people have no brains and no shame. Story 6. Now the cultists continue to believe whatever convoluted nonsense about Barack Obama they receive as a distraction. Seriously, go to the conservative subreddit right now and look for any mention of this story. You will not find one, but you will see about 10 posts about Barack Obama and Russia. Story 7. What happens now is nothing. His supporters rally around him and call it all fake news. The rest of us hope for a significant wave in the midterm elections, but I am not sure there are enough protected seats up for re-election to enable impeachment. He will likely lash out and try to prosecute former President Barack Obama to please his base and hope everyone forgets his past crimes. Story 8. Unfortunately, probably nothing. If we are lucky, people will become disgusted and angry, and maybe something will happen, but I will not be holding my breath. Story 9. I hope they release the information. We already knew he was on the flight logs. Bill Clinton and Prince Andrew were also on the flight logs. Being on flight logs does not necessarily mean they were involved, but it means they should be thoroughly investigated. Anyone involved in the sexual exploitation of minors deserves to be in prison. Proof that they were involved is needed first. Story 10. Nothing. Make America Great Again will simply drop the pedophile narrative now that it is clear their own side is most implicated, and they will move on to some new excuse to vilify the Democrats. Time is the only bullet Donald Trump will not dodge. Story 11. Republicans continue to support a child molester while blaming former President Barack Obama and President Joe Biden for various issues. Story 12. Nothing. All the talk of standing up against tyranny and protecting the children is just performative. Americans just want to pose with guns and hate the others regardless of how many children it harms. Story 13. Let's do a thought experiment. Suppose Donald Trump's name were in the files in a favorable way. What if the context was, Donald Trump found out Jeffrey Epstein was molesting underage girls and yelled at Epstein, "I will have nothing more to do with you." Donald Trump would have every reason to release that to the public. If that were the context, he would have nothing to hide. Story 14. For anyone keeping track, I have prepared an extensive list of the consequences Donald Trump will suffer as a result of this. 1. Absolutely no consequences at all. Story 15. The individual accidentally fell out of a closed high-rise window with self-inflicted bullet wounds in their back. Story 16. Durbin submitted a letter to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice stating that Trump ordered more than 300,000 documents to be examined and flagged if his name appeared, so they could theoretically be removed. We have the most politicized Department of Justice in history with the most ineffective Attorney General in history. Nothing will happen until we vote these individuals out and then spend however much time is necessary fixing their mistakes and holding them all accountable, no matter how long it takes. Story 17. I guess our best hope is a long series of extremely painful organ failures. Writhing in pain on sweaty sheets as he waits for the heart to fail, with nothing but hate mail and contempt from the world in general, thinking about how many people would pay to watch, with an extra charge for a recording of his last breath. Yes, that's a good start. We should get one of those large plastic tanks that can hold hundreds of gallons, and let it be known to him that it is being shipped around the country so everybody gets a chance to spit in it before the whole thing is dumped on his grave. Now, as for the Trump children, when they dare to show their faces. Story 18. Republicans shut down House floor to avoid Jeffrey Epstein vote. Letter from Pam Bondi to Patel stating there were documents and a list related to Epstein. Pictures of Donald Trump and Epstein. Epstein says he was Trump's closest friend. Timeline of their friendship. Court document alleging Epstein and Trump sexually assaulted a 13-year-old together. Alex Acosta and the Epstein plea deal. Donald Trump has talked about releasing the Epstein files before. Trump bragged about walking into changing rooms at the Miss Teen USA pageants. Trump cheated on his multiple wives. Trump was caught on microphone saying women allow him to grab them inappropriately. Trump made inappropriate comments about his daughter, saying he would be dating her if she was not his daughter. Trump has a history of sexual assault allegations and lawsuits. In a 1998 interview 2 years before his 2000 presidential campaign, Trump said his history with women could be controversial in a future campaign. Donald Trump reportedly partakes in sex parties involving minors. Here are the Epstein files that have been leaked or released. Verified court documents related to Epstein. The Black Book includes Donald Trump. His name is circled indicating involvement in the trafficking ring according to the original source. Flight logs related to Epstein. Trump's promise to his daughter. I have a deal with her. She's 17 and doing great. She made me promise I would never date a girl younger than her. Trump's modeling agency was allegedly connected to Jeffrey Epstein's pipeline. Timeline of related events. List of Republican sexual abusers. Senator from Minnesota arrested for attempting to meet with a minor. GOP strategist was arrested on 10 felony counts of underage sex trafficking. Trump campaign advisor pleaded guilty to child pornography and sex trafficking charges. Story 19. My best guess is we never see what is in the Epstein files and Donald Trump never gets punished. Right now, I think the technology entrepreneurs and the old money Republicans are tired of Donald Trump's volatility with our economy, his tariffs, and pressuring the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rate. Currently, we are seeing an effort from the oligarchs to remove Donald Trump. My guess is they will keep releasing more information every week. When you see it on Fox News, I believe it is over for Donald Trump. I do believe it is most likely over for him now, but if Fox News starts airing the same information that is in the Wall Street Journal, it is over. We are in the hurry up and wait stage of this. The oligarchs got their tax breaks. Now they are waiting to see what happens come September when the House of Representatives returns from their break. If the public Epstein allegations are connecting, they will invoke the 25th Amendment and install a less chaotic puppet in Vice President Mike Pence. Right now, I do think the allegations are connecting. Will they be connecting in 4 weeks? 6 weeks? I guess we will see. Story 20. It is interesting that Murdoch is applying full pressure against Donald Trump. When you give media tycoons and oligarchs this much power and influence, they will turn on you. Murdoch is close to the end of his life and has no concerns left to hold back. It is satisfying to see. Story 21. Remember that time Donald Trump was found liable for forcefully touching a woman without consent by a jury of his American peers, and then members of the Republican Party voted for him? Members of the Republican Party knowingly vote for offenders. Do not support the Republican Party. Story 22. Trump is doubtless involved in the Epstein files more than everyone else combined. What happens now? The Trump administration will continue to lie and try to bury the story. Story 23. Republican voters pretend to be outraged. They are somewhat upset that their false moral stance, being against pedophilia, has been clearly proven to be insincere. However, anyone foolish enough to vote for Donald Trump 3 times will do so a 4th time. If you think any of them are genuinely against pedophilia, ask yourself, when do they care about the well-being of children if they cannot use it to label people they dislike as evil? If they cannot call someone a groomer, pedophile, or baby killer, when do they care about children? They do not care about children being shot with guns. They do not care about children who get cancer. They voted for Donald Trump knowing he stole from a children's cancer charity. That is profoundly evil, and all of them support it. They also consistently vote to end cancer research. They do not care about children starving, suffering, or dying. They have also shown they will fully support a rapist. They are fully okay with Donald Trump raping women, but suddenly, for the first time, they would be 0% okay with someone raping a child? No, they are fully okay with it. If you have been waiting to see what the Republican Party's moral line is, note how long you have been waiting. There is no line. There are no morals. The only thing they are upset about is not being invited to participate. Story 24. Nothing ever happens to racists. Look at the Civil War. The soldiers in the Union let all of the traitorous soldiers go home and doomed the southern states to centuries of ignorance and inbreeding. It led to where we are now, government by racist individuals. Story 25. I do not know what happens next, but Ken White had an excellent point. It would be a shame if someone told him that this is how J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Sam Bankman-Fried were planning to get him out of office. Story 26. Since January 6th, I have come to expect that nothing righteous ever happens to the people who deserve it in this country. So, I am going with absolutely nothing. Story 27. The megachurches are still full despite their pastors continually getting arrested for similar offenses. Conservative legislatures are still lowering the age of consent and child marriage laws. I do not expect supporters of former President Donald Trump to care or believe any of it. Ex-Trump spiritual advisor surrenders on child sexual abuse charges. Robert Morris, former pastor of a Texas megachurch, was charged with 5 counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. Morris was known to be politically active. The church hosted Donald Trump on its Dallas campus in 2020 for a discussion on race relations and the economy. He was also a member of Donald Trump's Spiritual Advisory Committee and Evangelical Executive Advisory Board during his first presidential term, and joined an effort to mobilize conservatives and evangelicals in support of Donald Trump's successful 2024 presidential campaign. Story 28. My $2 predictions. Panicky attempts to avoid hearings by the grand old party leadership, then depending on midterm elections for a third impeachment. A decent-sized block of Make America Great Again disengages from politics again, never admitting they were wrong but deleting the receipts from their social media. Story 29. 1. He resigns for health reasons. 2. Does nothing, but this story is not going away. 3. Bombs a country. Story 30. Nothing. The Republican Party will do everything they can to distract from it, and it will be swept under the rug. Most of his supporters are as hateful as he is and would not care if he shot a child on camera. Story 31. I guess that answers the question of what changed. Oh my God, he ran on releasing it. Something must have changed. Jewish overlords? The deep state? No dummies. Donnie is in there if that was blatantly obvious. Story 32. I never understood the distinction between suicide and murder that everyone makes. Epstein knew he was better off dead than experiencing whatever horrific thing anyone, especially Donald Trump, could subject him to with just a little influence. He would have disappeared into a hole and been subjected to extreme levels of abuse until he killed himself anyway. He had first-hand accounts of rape involving very powerful people. Epstein knew he was better off dead than being murdered. He had a peaceful death compared to many. A man in prison a few years ago had a broomstick shoved so far up his body that it perforated his stomach. He died slowly from toxins released in his body from his intestines, stomach, and liver. It was not just shoved up once. He was assaulted with a significant length of a broken broomstick. Why? Despite being in protective custody like Jeffrey Dahmer and many others, this man had spoken about his crimes to his family, which included a gang member. Just the fact that someone in his family knew the truth about the crime, not the police or a citizen, led to his brutal killing. He was found in the janitor's closet. He wasn't even allowed out of his cell except to shower, yet he still ended up severely harmed. That is what Epstein was looking forward to if he stayed alive. Story 33. Nothing happens. From day one, it was known he is in the files. Cognitive dissonance will have his defenders believing every lie and deflection Donald Trump throws at them. The Supreme Court of the United States will back Donald Trump, and the cult of personality will blame Barack Obama and Joseph Biden. To admit a single fault is to question all the allegations. That cannot happen without creating a serious dilemma in many people's minds. Critical thinking is not prevalent in the country at this time. Story 34. Here is exactly what is going to happen. It will be proven that Donald Trump is, in fact, a pedophile and did molest hundreds of underage girls. He will continue to deny it. The Make America Great Again movement will then try to justify pedophilia as a good and moral thing, but only when their leader does it. Some members of the movement will start openly admitting to being pedophiles, similar to how some openly express extremist views. The Epstein scandal will then fade away, with only Democrats and independents discussing it while the movement makes excuses and justifications. Story 35. Nothing will happen. This country is over, sorry to say. Once Donald Trump was re-elected last November, it was the final nail in the coffin for the whole American experiment. We are done. If it does get rectified, it will take decades to repair. Story 36. What happens now? Weapon of mass distraction. Accuse former President Barack Obama of treason. It is a tired playbook for this group. Story 37. Was that ever in question? Did we ever not think Donald Trump's name was in those files? We are well past the point of wondering whether or not Donald Trump was involved with Jeffrey Epstein and his pedophile ring. He very obviously was. The remaining questions are to what extent, and more crucially, how will this administration manipulate the circumstances to reduce or eliminate any fallout from that? Story 38. The statement contains serious and unfounded allegations. It is important to communicate responsibly and avoid making unverified claims about individuals. Story 39. What Epstein's own brother confirms is that they were best friends and spent a lot of time together. The phone numbers were saved in multiple phones. There are many photos over the years with these two and Maxwell together, including images with young girls. Multiple women involved in the trafficking have come forward, confirming their involvement. Supporters of former President Donald Trump often ignore allegations that he is a pedophile. It has been speculated whether his first victim was his daughter, but the truth remains unknown. There is anticipation for an offer of immunity and a pardon if Maxwell testifies before Congress that Trump is not involved. Story 40. At this point, Donald Trump is invincible. It does not matter what comes out of those files. Make America Great Again supporters will not care. The Republican Party will not care. He will be instantly forgiven, or they will all just say it is fake news. Every time I hear about a major new development that is supposed to take Donald Trump down, nothing happens, and you never hear about it again. It is similar to those articles where scientists claim you can cure cancer with a penny or something equally absurd, and then you never hear about it again. Story 41. There are prominent figures from both political parties, as well as numerous celebrities and global heads of state on that list. It will never be made public. Story 42. Haven't you been paying attention? Nothing happens now. It could be revealed tomorrow beyond all reasonable doubt that there has never been such a person as Jeffrey Epstein, that the person we thought was Jeffrey Epstein was instead Donald Trump wearing a very convincing mask, and such a revelation would have no negative impact on Donald Trump. We are living in his reality. Story 43. Nothing happens now because the Reich, formerly known as Republicans, are in charge of everything. They will never hold him accountable, for he is their God, and everything he does is moral, legal, and justified to them because it upsets the opposition. Story 44. There is a chance. It is slim and hard to believe, but there is a chance we wake up with a bombshell piece of news that ends Donald Trump. It reveals him as the exact kind of wealthy pedophile everyone hates more than anything. Story 45. Nothing in the near future. The Epstein list is not a list of names with timestamps or details about underage individuals involved. It is a list of people with whom he had social and business connections. Your name being in the Epstein files does not automatically mean you are guilty of anything. Donald Trump is also very wealthy, so it is likely he and Epstein were part of the same social circles, but that does not necessarily mean he was involved in anything sexual, which requires more than just a name on a list of people. I believe he was involved, but evidence is needed. Remember that Epstein was a very wealthy businessman who had many business meetings on his island and elsewhere where nothing sexual was involved. It will take a lot of time to process all of this, and they cannot simply arrest him or anyone else based on this alone. Story 46. What happens now? Why do we go after Dr. Anthony Fauci next for the irreparable harm he caused to this country? See, he is over there. Look over there. Story 47. I do not know. There will be zero consequences for Donald Trump because nothing matters anymore. We will all move along to the next story. Story 48. Nothing for now. The Wall Street Journal is slowly chipping away at Trump, and I think they will continue releasing stories through next year for the midterm elections. The story here is not that his name is in the Epstein files, but the administration's active cover-up and the lengths they are going to avoid releasing the files as originally promised. Story 49. Wall Street Journal. Who would have thought they would be the ones doing actual journalism in 2025? Story 50. His supporters once again follow the talking points that the Heritage Foundation provides to every conservative influencer and media outlet. Story 51. Now we remind everyone that Republicans are protecting pedophiles, and anyone who votes for them is enabling child sexual abuse. Story 52. It seems like the people in power have decided Trump is gone. It is almost certainly not a coincidence that all these things are being revealed one after another. These are stories people have held onto for years. They just found footage of Trump's wedding. That is believable. No one has looked at footage of Trump's wedding in the last decade. They just thought of it now. When significant changes happen, they have to release information slowly to prepare the public. It seems we are being prepared for Trump to go down and be replaced. As unlikely as that sounds. Story 53. Apparently, Bondi said that nothing in the files warranted further investigation or prosecution. So, if that is the case, then what possible reason on earth could you have for not releasing that file to the public? A group of liars and frauds, criminals to the core. Story 54. Americans have been asking what now for 10 years at this point. The man was literally convicted of felonies and received no sentence. When are you going to understand that none of it matters? The law does not apply to him. Story 55. Nothing is going to happen. There will be more revelations about Donald Trump being a pedophile, and nothing will change. His supporters are hateful and will support him no matter what he does. Story 56. Nothing happens because conservatives are already beginning the about face, and once their plastic but PFAS-infested brains absorb the instructions from their various leaders, the story dies. The temperature in the room continues to rise, more conflict is fomented, and I continue to hope against hope for things that would put me on a list to type here. Story 57. What happens next? A poorly executed, completely telegraphed, and bungled cover-up. Honestly, is there a single thing they have not managed to bungle over the last decade? Story 58. Supporters of Donald Trump will not believe it until he admits it. The evidence has been present since 2015, when the woman who was a victim at Epstein Island was part of a lawsuit that targeted Donald Trump specifically for rape as a minor. Similar to Donald Trump's election trials, the people who matter most received death threats, and she dropped the case. Story 59. Would not be surprised if J.D. Vance decides to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Donald Trump. His usefulness in passing the Build Back Better Act is over, so there is no need to keep him around. Story 60. What a dumb question. What happens now? What happens now? Nothing. Nothing is happening right now, and nothing will continue to happen. Story 61. Realistically, even with irrefutable proof that Donald Trump committed sexual assault against minors, most likely nothing will happen unless House Republicans finally have a moment of realization and decide he should be impeached for it. However, they probably will not. We are going to need a certain plumber in a green hat. Story 62. Sexual offenders being sent to a designated facility is not news. Supporters will ignore it and continue, while others will be shocked and do nothing. Story 63. 100% Rupert Murdoch approved this story in his newspaper. It will be interesting to see how Rupert Murdoch will approach the monster he helped create. Is Rupert Murdoch really dropping Donald Trump? If so, brace yourself for more trickle-down creepy stories of Donald Trump in Rupert Murdoch's media. Story 64. Some media diversion tactics manipulate the masses by distracting them with benign topics. Story 65. Him being in the Epstein files is not a surprise, nor is it condemning. We have known he was friends with Epstein. Additionally, being in the files does not guarantee involvement with children. Epstein was a financier for tens or hundreds of people. He was a socialite. Not everyone would have participated or even known about those acts. It depends on exactly what files Donald Trump is in. This is coming from someone who dislikes Donald Trump. Story 66. Nothing. People in the United States voted to make a pedophile their king. They are getting the leaders they want and deserve. Story 67. This feels like the kind of story that will either explode with new bombshells or quietly fade into the background once the next news cycle hits. Given former President Donald Trump's history of dangling pardons, the first comment is not even that far-fetched. But let's be real, unless there is undeniable proof, his base will just call it another witch hunt. Meanwhile, the rest of us are left wondering if accountability ever actually happens for people at that level. Story 68. He resigns gracefully and quietly, taking his whole cabinet with him. I was not able to type that without laughing to myself. He will just blame President Joe Biden and former President Barack Obama for random things and jingle his keys to draw his supporters' attention away from it if he can. Story 69. Nothing. Of course, his name is in the Epstein files. He has been friends with Epstein for a long time. Are people really that surprised that people's contact information was written down in the 1980s and 1990s when we did not have smartphones? As long as we do not know the context of the name in the files, I do not care about this kind of headline. Story 70. If Donald Trump were in the Epstein files, it would have been revealed during the Joe Biden administration. Whatever collateral damage both administrations fear, it must be significant. Release the files. Story 71. Who did not know that Donald Trump was deeply involved with Jeffrey Epstein and his island? He spoke openly about his desire for his then young daughter, Ivanka, and paraded around teen universe beauty pageants. You cannot make this up. Despite all the deception and falsehoods, this is the one thing that might bring him down. Still not trusting this. Story 72. In a recording, Jeffrey Epstein described himself as Donald Trump's closest friend and claimed intimate knowledge of his proclivity for sex, including cuckolding his best friends. Epstein boasted of his closeness to Trump and his now-wife Melania by claiming the first time he slept with her was on his plane. He also claimed that while Trump had friends, he was at heart a friendless man incapable of kindness. Epstein alleged that Trump had undergone scalp reduction surgery for baldness and called himself the Trumpster. Epstein said Trump was almost functionally illiterate but did read the page 6 gossip column in the New York Post. He said that Trump was incapable of reading a balance sheet, and any act of kindness would have been an accident. On the tape, Epstein can also be heard saying, "He's a horrible human being. He does nasty things to his best friends' wives, anyone who he first tries to gain their trust and uses it to do bad things to them." Epstein alleged that Trump had an elaborate scheme to procure sex with his friends' wives. He would call the men into his Trump Tower office to ask about their sex lives and offer them sex with beauty pageant contestants. He would do this while the wives were, unknown to their husbands, listening on speakerphone so that he could then seduce the wives on the basis their husbands had betrayed them, Epstein claimed. In 2002, Trump told New York Magazine about Epstein, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side." In 2004, Epstein believed he was the high bidder on a Palm Beach house at $36 million and took Trump to see it and to give him advice on moving the swimming pool. Trump then promptly went around his back and outbid him at $40 million, though he likely did not have $40 million. Epstein believed Trump was fronting for someone and threatened to sue him. Epstein believed Trump then informed the police in Palm Beach that he had a never-ending stream of underage girls in and out of his house there. and thus began his long years of legal peril. If true, this action provides circumstantial evidence, along with his 2002 statement, that Trump, at a minimum, would have been aware of Epstein's crimes and therefore would be complicit. It is like a crack addict calling the police on their dealer after a falling out. It is unclear if the Palm Beach Police Department has any record of how that investigation began, but it likely came in as an anonymous tip. Additionally, the real estate incident was the same as the one involving Russian oligarch Dmitry Rybolovlev buying the property from Trump for $95 million 2 years later. The oligarch used the deal to launder more than $50 million. Story 73. Not to add to the 500th nothing post. What could happen? For some reason, the Epstein case has been the one issue that divides his base. It's not because it isn't horrible, but since it's Trump, it's remarkable that it sticks like the 100,000 other horrible things he's done. It has more legs, maybe because it places him at the center of the conspiracy storm he created. It's really easy to point and say Trump is a pedophile. Remember Roy Moore? When it came out that he molested kids, Alabama elected a Democrat. So apparently this might be enough to divide his base of support, and the sharks could start circling. J.D. Vance might take the opportunity to stab Trump in the back. It's not the end of fascist America, but it may be the beginning of the end for Trump. Story 74. Nothing, because that is not proof of anything. His name being in them could mean anything. It does not explain the context. Plus, this is hardly a surprise. We have already seen his name unredacted in the address book and flight logs. It stands to reason his name is elsewhere. And if this were proof of anything, in that case also nothing. He will say it is made up, and half the country will believe him. Story 75. Nothing? Because this could mean anything. These anonymously sourced leaks from a law enforcement investigation are frankly unethical. Investigation is inherently speculative in many cases. You could think someone was a suspect and get a search warrant for their phone, and oops, it shows he was at a bonfire across town when the burglary occurred. His name is still in the investigation file. The names of anyone interviewed, witnesses or otherwise, are also included. If Donald Trump was on video sexually assaulting a minor, then he would have been prosecuted for that instead of a dispute over classified documents. Story 76. Nothing will happen and probably never will happen. It has been proven that the rich and powerful here can do whatever they want without any repercussions. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.